Hey, welcome back to the channel. Have you ever wondered what abuse does to your brain? If you're new here, we explain science stuff. So let's explain science. First of all, there are many different kinds of abuse: physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, and they all do something to your brain. But let's start with physical abuse. Physical abuse is when someone harms you physically. Maybe they hit you or beat you or burned you or something like that. Now, when this happens, you get these massive releases of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, and that can actually cause changes in your brain. Like, for example, it can shrink your hippocampus. The hippocampus is the part of the brain that helps you remember things, and it also helps regulate your stress response. So, if you have smaller hippocampus, you're going to have trouble remembering things and you're going to be more reactive to stress. In other words, you're going to be more likely to experience stress. Basically, all the bad stuff that happens from physical abuse comes from having elevated levels of stress hormones in your body long term. That can lead to anxiety and depression. It can also disrupt your sleep and your ability to concentrate. Next up, we got sexual abuse. This is not just unwanted sexual touch. It can also include things like forcing someone to watch pornography, or forcing someone to engage in sexual acts. For example, being forced to watch pornography can activate the reward centers in your brain. Those areas of your brain are going to start associating pleasure with the trauma of the experience, and that is why people who experience this kind of abuse may seek out risky sexual experiences later in life because they try to recreate those same sensations in their brain. They're trying to recapture that feeling of pleasure that they experienced while watching that pornography. Also, people who experience sexual abuse often suffer from PTSD, which causes hypervigilance, nightmares, avoidance of certain places or things, and emotional numbing. Now let's talk about emotional and psychological abuse. Emotional abuse is when someone constantly insults you or humiliates you. Psychological abuse is when someone manipulates you or gaslights you. Both of these can cause the same kind of damage. When you're constantly being insulted or humiliated or manipulated, you start to believe those negative things being said about you. You start to internalize them, and that leads to low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, and difficulty trusting others. Also, because of the constant stress of the abuse, your immune system suffers, so you become more susceptible to illness. Finally, we got neglect. Neglect is when you don't get your basic needs met. Maybe you didn't get fed, or maybe you were kept clean, or maybe you were taken to doctor appointments. When this happens, especially as a child, it can cause you to have difficulty developing your social skills. You won't learn how to interact with other people. You may also have difficulty regulating your emotions, because those are things that parents normally help their children with. But if you were neglected, then you weren't properly socialized. So now you have trouble interacting with others. You have trouble regulating your emotions. Basically, all of the different types of abuse cause chronic stress. And that stress creates an altered state in your brain. In fact, children who experience abuse have smaller brains than children who don't. Their brains literally shrink. Now, even though all of these things are bad, the good news is that the brain is extremely adaptable, so you can recover from some of this damage. You can reduce the negative effects of abuse through therapy, medication, lifestyle changes, things like that. And no matter what kind of abuse you've experienced, you should know that it's not your fault. It was the abuser who chose to do those things. It wasn't your fault. So I hope that cleared some things up. Thank you for watching. See you next time.